Hello and welcome to the UFERN webinar series on 21st century field education. My name is Kari O'Connell and I'm the PI of the UFERN project, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. We're going to get to hear from Alicia Farmer and Dr. Stephanie Shaulskiy about transforming learning at the University of Michigan Biological Station, bridging the gap between environmental science and other disciplines. Just before we get started hearing from Alicia and Stephanie, just wanted to share with you all, especially for those of you who are new to the webinar series, that UFERN, the Undergraduate Field Experiences Research Network, is funded through NSF as a research coordination network project. And the idea is to build an open, inclusive network around around fostering effective undergraduate field experiences, with several goals around evidence-based models and practices, sharing assessment tools, broadening participation and retention of students, and doing research on student learning. And this webinar series is one of our activities for the year to build a network. Just want to give everyone a heads up that our next webinar will be March 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll be hearing from Dr. Alison Stokes from the University of Plymouth, from the UK actually, about inclusive science education focusing on fieldwork pedagogy. And we'll have a reminder screen at the end about that as well. So just a little bit about logistics for the webinar. All the participants are automatically muted, so we can't hear you. And there should be a chat on the bottom of your Zoom screen, a little box for chat. And we'd ask that if you have resources or websites to share that are relevant to the webinar, that would be a great place to do that. And we'll save any of those and post them online so they're available for everyone. And I also think our speakers have a couple questions that they want people to respond to, and you'll be able to do that in chat as well. If you have questions for the speakers, we're going to have them do their presentation and then hold questions till the end. But at any time, you can start typing your questions into the Q&A box. And again, that's along the bottom bar of your Zoom screen. And then we'll facilitate, hopefully, a nice long question answer session at the end. And then the last thing is we will be recording the webinar and posting it online. So you're welcome to either listen to it again or share it with other people who might be interested. And so with that introduction, I'd like to introduce our speakers. Alicia Farmer is the program manager for the Transforming Learning program at the University of Michigan Biological Station. Alicia has been at the Biological Station since 2008. The Transforming Learning program, which I think we'll get to hear a lot more about, is a 5-year grant-funded effort to bring new students and disciplines to the Biological Station. And Alicia's interests are in institutional equity and recruitment of underrepresented minorities and women in higher education. She has a Juris Doctorate from the University of Michigan. And our other speaker is Dr. Stephanie Shaulskiy, and she's the Program Evaluation Coordinator for the Transforming Learning program. Since 2017, she has been in charge of assessment of courses and student experiences at the Biological Station, and she uses a multiple methods approach to examine student motivation, class belonging, and future career aspirations of students. And her research focuses on motivation and belonging for college students. And with that introduction, I'm gonna stop my share, Alicia and Stephanie, and it's gonna be all you.
Okay. So I guess before we share our screen, we'll at least give a wave so people know who we are. I'm Alicia.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
And we're in the same room, so we're going to just slide the computer around as we show our slides. Is that the right one? Let's see. Start share. Okay. And maybe, can people see the slides now? Good. I'm getting a thumbs up from Kari. Okay, so we're going to jump right in to making sure. Okay, it wasn't advancing when I thought it would be. We're going to jump right into giving a quick overview of the station. So you've got a little bit of context of where we work and what its history is, and then the Transforming Learning Program, which is this new endeavor that we've undertaken. And so that's my part, and then what we are learning about the students at the station and about their learning, which is Stephanie's part. So just to orient you to the biological station, we have been home to biological, ecological teaching and research for about 100 years, 100 plus years in the same location. And I'm going to try to use my cursor, here it is, to show that the University of Michigan is located down here in Ann Arbor. And the field station that we work at is up here at the tip of the lower peninsula of Michigan. It's about a 4-hour drive or 250 miles from the university campus. So we are, you know, physically remote and in a very different habitat and environment than the southeast corner of the state where the university is. And in fact, we're located on a lake in this kind of region where 3 of the Great Lakes converge. We've got the Canadian Shield nearby, so some really different types of landforms and habitats. And during the course of what for us is a typical season, at our peak, which is around July, we have about 200 to 300 people in residence in camp. If you look over the course of an entire session, you know, a research season, a teaching season, we'll have between 350 to 400 people. So, you know, and these are both people taking classes, teaching classes, helping teach classes, as well as everybody doing research from undergraduate researchers up through senior PIs. So we've really got a pretty big and diverse group of people here. The Transforming Learning Program, and I just didn't have anywhere else to put this picture, but this is a little bit closer zoom of the lake and our corner of it. I guess Kari mostly explained this is a 5-year grant-funded program through the Provost's office at the University of Michigan. And when our director, Newt Nadelhofer, applied for the grant, it was with these main goals in mind, to diversify who is at the station, both academically, because I think all of us who work at field stations know that we get we tend to have a lot of biology or geology or earth science majors, and we wanted to bring in a group of students who are studying related areas of environmental problem solving, but not necessarily in the biology and ecology field. So diversify the academic backgrounds, the level. You know, we have a lot of field stations tend to have more upper class students and senior researchers. We wanted to get students at a younger level. And they tend to be pretty white and socioeconomically privileged places, and so we wanted to diversify the racial and socioeconomic composition of people who are at the station, as well as getting the station's facilities optimally used. So looking at times when we're not at full capacity, like May, early June, late August, and trying to get students there at that time. So for those students who then end up coming, one goal would be to increase their scientific literacy, their familiarity with ecological, environmental concepts. Recognizing that getting people there 4 hours away from Ann Arbor in the summer means overcoming some hurdles. We've addressed 2 of them, or tried to take the 2 biggest ones that we could identify, which would be time commitment and cost, and deal with those with some structural features of the program. So in terms of time commitment, our typical courses historically have been a 1-month spring term or a 2-month summer term, or students could do both, but that's a pretty big commitment for someone who is maybe not so sold on, environmental sciences. So we wanted to explore shorter courses to give some time options. Then if they want to work a job for the rest of the summer or do a different internship or something, we haven't committed all their time. And then taking away as many financial obstacles as possible, both by subsidizing room and board for everybody in the Transforming Learning Program, and shifting the tuition from the semesters when they're doing the work at the station to a semester. And at Michigan, University of Michigan, fall semester and winter semester are the two academic ones. That's what we call them. I think some places call it spring semester, but for us, it's fall and winter. And then if they're at the station for the spring or summer, pull those credits into the university's block tuition in the fall courses that we've developed. Primarily, we have extensions of Ann Arbor-based classes. For example, water law and policy. Someone takes a regular class in Ann Arbor, lecture format, and then they have the option of doing an extension up at the station for 2 or 3 weeks once the class ends. Also, we have the short courses, which are just standalone 2 to 3 week classes at the station, not tied to anything back in Ann Arbor. Maybe a brief immersive residence. So during the fall semester, come up for a long weekend or during a fall break, or we're trying our first longer term residential semester program this year. So it's a full 8 credits in the spring semester. Just quickly, I'm running over time for my part. So I want to mention that these are the courses we've had so far in 2017 and 18. And I would just call attention to the fact that they represent a diversity of disciplines. So we have some humanities courses, social science, some professional schools represented with design and architecture, and STEM fields beyond what we have historically had at the station with chemistry, statistics, microbiology. So I highlighted those words in the titles. And I think that brings us up to Stephanie's part and the assessments. So there'll be a second here while we switch presentations.
Sharing. Okay, hi, I'm Stephanie Shaulskiy, and I'm presenting our assessment of our Transforming Learning program. And in doing our assessment of the Transforming Learning program, we realized that we really had to look at what's happening at the station overall. So we started off with our goals for the program, which were diversifying the student body at UMBS. So we also need to look at who is traditionally coming to field stations, engaging more students, and increasing the scientific literacy and understanding of students. And to look at whether we're achieving these goals, we created an assessment using both qualitative and quantitative methods. Again, looking at both the experience of these transforming learning students and then the experience of students overall at the field station at UMBS. We developed a survey with some key topics to address some of these questions of who's participating in the station and what are their experiences like. We looked at demographics, we looked at student engagement, so things like their classroom motivation, their sense of belonging in the class, their sense of belonging to the station community, and also things like their science confidence, which a couple examples of items in that measure are, I feel like I understand the process of conducting research, I feel like I'm able to work as part of a team. And we also asked about their motivation for science in general, their perceived importance of science for their career in the future. We also looked at what students perceived were important learning factors in the course at the station, their future plans for science, reasons and motivations that they took the course. And we are continuing to track some of these outcomes over time to look at things like retention in STEM majors, retention at the university, grades, and other kinds of outcomes, not just retention in the STEM majors, but how the experience at the station may have impacted students who don't just want to go into STEM majors, right? So some of our transforming learning students who are coming from different disciplines as well. One of the new things that we added, so this is our second year of assessing this program, and one of the new things that we added this year were some specific questions about students' perceptions of their understanding of science, their perceptions of their ability to do specific science skills, and their perceptions of their ability to use science communication, their career aspirations, and we are continuing to track what we're calling the broader impact from the experience. And I'll go through some examples of what we're looking at as we go through the presentation. So we sent out a general survey. The first year that we did the assessment, we just sent out a survey at the end of students' experience, and This second year, in our second year of assessment, we gathered information pre and post from students. We were able to survey 157 students who were in courses at the station and had a varied response rate based on our group. You'll see our transforming learning students had a very high response rate of 96%. And this year, a lot of the faculty and the station were able to offer students a 1% extra credit for completing our survey, which really helped, especially with having students take a pre and a post response, pre and a post survey. We are also surveying courses on campus because we really want to understand, are the findings that we're seeing at the station and in these courses unique to this environment, or some of the things we're finding similar to other courses taught on campus. We are also, as I mentioned earlier, conducting longitudinal surveys of our students who go to the station across time. So one of the things we were looking at is what is the distribution of students who are at the station. And you can see the more yellow highlighted areas are students who are in the Transforming Learning program, and they make up close to half of the students who are at the station this past summer. We also looked, as Alicia mentioned, one of our goals was to diversify the student population. So one of the things that we looked at was race and ethnicity of students at the station. And you can see in our 2018 demographics, and these are from student records information, we had a slightly lower percentage of white students in our Transforming Learning program compared to our summer term, and a lower percentage of white students, so a more racial and ethnically diverse group compared to our spring term. And then we looked at our comparison of the last 2 years of the program. And in the first year, we had about 60.6% of the students were white in 2017. So in 2018, we had a bit of a higher percentage at 68.2% white students in the program. But overall, the population seems to be more racial and ethnically diverse compared to the students who have traditionally come to the station. We also looked at things like academic year, generation status, and gender. And in terms of academic year, the students coming to the station in the Transforming Learning program tended to be first year and second year students. We had a higher percentage of first and second year students compared to our traditional spring and summer terms, and similar percentages in terms of gender and in terms of generation status. You can see on this slide some infographics with majors of students who came to the station in our first year of data collection, and these were very similar in the second year as well. And I think it's important to note in our spring and summer term, you see a lot of words like PITE, which is program in the environment here, biology, evolution, molecular, cellular, and in our Transforming Learning program, we had a wider variety of majors, so students from art, students from English, economics, Spanish, so a much wider variety of majors in terms of students coming to the station. We looked at a few different things with our 2017 data, and I'm going to share a few of those points, and then I'm going to show you how we built upon them in our second year. So we looked at our students in our Transforming Learning courses compared to our traditional spring and summer courses in terms of their engagement. So for students who don't maybe come from different majors, or if they're at the station for shorter times, what is their engagement like compared to spring and summer, the students who would traditionally come to a station? And we really found that their levels of engagement overall were pretty high. We asked, the engagement measures were on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being I strongly agree. And the measures across each of those groups were well above a 4. So overall, students were pretty highly engaged in the courses and their learning and their motivation for science, their interest in science. We did see some differences based on race and ethnicity. Within our Transforming Learning program and our spring and summer term, we looked at a comparison of our white students and our non-white students. And we found within the Transforming Learning program, the white students were more highly engaged in a few of those measures compared to our non-white students. So those were things including class belonging, class learning orientation, science competence, and station belonging. We didn't find any significant differences between our white and non-white students in our spring and summer term. And we also looked at engagement in a Transforming Learning chemistry course taught at the station compared to a traditional chemistry course taught on campus, finding that students at the station had a higher level of engagement, again, on things like class learning orientation, class belonging, motivation for science, compared to students in a traditional section of the lab course taught on campus. We also asked students about what do they perceive are the factors that contribute most to their learning in the course. And so students ranked these from 1 being the factor that contributes most to their course, with 5 being the factor that contributed least to their learning in the course. So those factors included learning from your peers, small class size, hands-on learning in the course or learning by doing, understanding the scientific method, and getting to know faculty in the UMBS setting. And we had a spot also for them to write in other responses if there was something else beyond what we listed here. And we'll try an interactive component. So what factor, all of us are interested in field education and know a bit about the field experience. So what factor do you think might contribute most to learning in the course? We have a B, C, D, or E. And if you would like, please type in the chat box and we should be able to see your responses. Oh. Okay, so I see A, I see a lot of C, everything, C, C, okay, great. So as many of you predicted, we found that hands-on learning in the course Learning by Doing was the factor that students perceived contributed most to their learning in the course. With students in each of our programs, our Transforming Learning, our spring, and our summer term programs, ranking this as the factor that contributed most to their learning in the course. Now, in terms of the factor that contributed least to their learning in the course, students in all of the groups chose the understanding the scientific method as the factor that contributed least to their learning in the course. So interesting here. We also asked students about what are some of their reasons for taking the course. So before you took the course and then after you took the course, what are some of the reasons you took the course and what are some of your motivations? So we asked students to select all that apply, and some of the different responses included I was interested in the course, the cost of the course, the duration of the course, trade-off with summer earning opportunities, fulfilling a department or degree requirement, and interaction with faculty. And I'm not going to show you the trends for each of these, but I do want to show you one in particular, which was the interaction with faculty. And I think this was a really interesting trend for us to see because it was very similar across each of our groups, with about a 20 to 30% increase across our Transforming Learning program, our spring, and our summer term, for students perceiving that this was an important reason for taking the course. And we saw this echoed in students' responses in the focus groups as well, which I'll go through in a bit. So in 2018, we built upon what we found, and we really wanted to start looking at some of our pre and our post information. So what are students' motivations? What are some of the things that they enter with coming to the station? And then how do those change over the course of time where they're actually at the station? So these are a few of our measures: our motivation for science, importance of science for their career, and their science confidence. And I'll show you which each of our groups, the pre and post scores. So here is our Transforming Learning program with their pre-scores. And again, if we can have anybody respond in their chat, we were wondering which of these measures do you think that students may have had the most increase in or the greatest growth in? Motivation for science, importance of science for their career, or their science confidence. So if anybody wants to respond in the chat. Okay, we've got a couple of responses. All right, so we have some science confidence, motivation. Great. So we actually found that the largest increase was in students' perceived science confidence over the course of being at the station. But students in our Transforming Learning program did have some small increases in their motivation for science and also the importance of science for their career. Spring term, just to show you the pattern also, here are their pre-responses and their post-responses. So again, seeing a pretty substantial increase in their perceived science confidence. And our summer term students, pre, and our summer term students post. So again, seeing a pretty substantial increase in science confidence, slightly lower importance of science for career, but I'll also go through which of these are significant and not, with the differences pre and post in a moment. We also looked at students' science understanding, science communication, and science skills for each of these groups. This is our transforming learning students with their pre-scores and their post scores. Our spring students with their pre-scores and their post scores. And then our summer students with their pre-scores and their post scores. So again, seeing that in many of these, their students' scores, mean scores on many of these measures increased over their time period at the station. So this is just summarizing which of these differences were significant. And you can see for our transforming learning students and our spring students, they had significant differences between the pre and post scores on science confidence, science skills, science understanding, and science communication. And for our summer term, there were significant differences on science confidence and science understanding. One of the questions that we have been asked with this program is, well, does the length of time really matter? Can students still gain a lot out of their experience for being there for only 2 weeks? And how might that compare to a student who's there for 3 or 4 weeks, or a student who's there through the entire summer? Might we expect that they have less gains if they're less time, or does it not matter? How much of a difference does the length of time matter in terms of their engagement? So I'm just going to go through a few of these to show you that we graphed this out just to see. And these are students who are there less than 3 weeks, the pre-survey responses, and their post-survey responses. Students were at the station for 3 or 4 weeks and their pre-survey responses, so pretty similar to less than 3 weeks, and their post-survey responses. And then again, our summer term students who were there for the station for 2 months, pre-responses and their post-responses. Another question that we asked is, does it matter if students, does major matter? Does the type of course matter? So do students in our science courses benefit maybe more or less than students in our humanities, our statistics courses, our art classes, all of these non-traditional classes to have at the station? Do we expect differences in their perceived learning? So these are our science courses in terms of their pre and their post, and then our humanities, art, statistics, all of our other courses, social sciences, and their pre-scores and their post scores. We also looked at characteristics of the students. So looking at, are there different gains for students in their first and second years compared to their third and fourth years? So separating the groups this way. So this is pre-scores for first and second year students, and post scores for first and second year students, and pre-scores for our third and fourth year students, pre and post. And then finally, we also looked at white versus non-white students. And you can see that the patterns are very similar to our white students pre and post, and our non-white students pre and post are pretty similar patterns. So going through, just to summarize, we see that there are pretty similar patterns of where we found significant differences on science confidence, science understanding, and science communication for our students who are there less than 3 weeks in those courses. Science confidence, science skills, science understanding, and science communication, there were significant differences pre and post. And again, for our summer term on science confidence and science understanding. When we broke them up by science courses and our humanities, social science, statistics courses, we saw significant differences pre and post on science confidence, skills, understanding, and communication for science, and between science confidence, science understanding, and communication for our humanities, social science, statistics courses. They're breaking the students up between first and second year and third, fourth, and fifth year. We saw similar patterns, except that we also saw that first and second year students had an increase in their motivation for science, a significant difference pre and post. And similar patterns for our white and non-white students in terms of significant differences and increases pre and post. So when we looked at our findings, our assessment findings in our 2018, we did not find the same differences that we found that first year in terms of differences between white and non-white students. So that's something we need to continue to look at. We have small numbers of non-white students. So that's something we're going to continue to track over time. We also looked at some of the courses at the station compared to traditional courses taught on campus, and found that students at the station had higher levels, especially of the factors, the engagement in their classrooms, so their classroom learning orientation, classroom belonging, and motivation, and also on a few of the science measures, such as science understanding and communication. But one thing that we have not yet done that we're doing currently is looking at some pre-scores for students on campus, because we really want to understand if what we see at the station is different than what we might see in a traditional course on campus, or if it may be the same. So that's one thing that we're really starting to look at now. And again, in 2018, we saw that students perceived hands-on learning to be the factor that contributed most to their learning in the class. We also conducted focus groups with each of the students in the Transforming Learning program with the goal to explore their experiences in the courses in more detail. So beyond what they say in a survey and what their responses are in the survey, we also really wanted to understand what their experiences were like in the course. Our key areas of interest were about what their experiences were like, both in the course and at the station. Were there things that students especially enjoyed or that could be improved? So we're using some of these things for programmatic improvements as well. Were there changes in students' perspectives about science, if they were taking a science course such as biology, chemistry, or microbiology, or fieldwork as a result of their experience? And we wanted to understand what are their motivations to enroll in these courses. So I'm going to share with you our findings from our focus groups, and these were similar across both of the years that we did focus groups with students. So students really talked about appreciating assignments that promoted autonomy. So one student in one of the classes shared, "I felt as personally responsible for the project. We had such control over it. I feel like it was something we created, and I never had that direct connection with one of my assignments like that." This was a first-year student who shared that. Another student shared, "We get to make something of our own." So again, really appreciating that many of these assignments gave them that opportunity to do something on their own. Students also talked about how important it was that the coursework that they had in the course was useful for both their communities and also for their future. So one of the chemistry students who we spoke with was talking about presenting their findings to one of the local watersheds as part of the class project, and the student shared, the results of this project is going to affect local government and make a change. I feel like I contributed to something that was actually going to make a difference. It wasn't just a theoretical lab report for some theoretical person. It was a real thing. They're actually going to use it, and we're contributing to it. Another student talking about the same project explained, it made me want to put more effort into it and become invested in it to know that it was actually going to be used to help someone. One of the projects that students worked on as part of the Transforming Learning program was actually to build a sustainable building. So talking about this experience, one student reflected, "It's empowering, it's not as scary. I feel like I could do something like this in the future." So again, giving them the opportunity with this coursework to see connections with the community and things that would help them with their own lives in the future and feeling empowered to do work like this again. We also see that students talked about their perspectives about science and their careers, and their experience with the program improved their feelings about science and gave students useful information about their future careers. Discussing feelings about chemistry, one student explained, "The chemistry lecture at U of M was my least favorite class, my worst grade. And this course at the station was my best grade and my favorite class I've taken at U of M, but they're both chemistry and they're supposed to be the same thing." So we saw a lot of comments like that about students' feelings about the subject improving, having taken the course at the station. Considering careers, another student reflected, "I wanted to go into public health and I didn't think that had much to do with chemistry, but now I'm seeing so many doors opening, and even just there's so many science things in public health too, so I'm seeing a lot of different opportunities." Another student from an urban background explained, I was just so interested in what people working with the piping plovers, we have birds at the station, piping plovers, do every day. They seem to be so into it, and seeing people like that kind of shows you that people actually like this stuff, and it's not a bad thing, you know, to go into this sort of field. So we saw a lot of these kinds of comments, especially from our first year students about careers. Another student who was a junior talked about how one of the courses could be applied to different kinds of careers. So she explained, the structure of this course, I can apply it to pretty much any field. The data collection, the proposal writing, I mean, I can take that and transfer it directly into another field, and I'll have these skills in a way that my colleagues may not. So really understanding that this information could be useful not just in giving information about future careers, but in giving skills and giving students specific skills and a skill set. One of the other things that we found is that students talked a lot about their relationships with faculty. And you saw earlier that graph about the interaction with faculty being a really important component for students, especially as a reason after they had taken the course, that they think it's important to take the course. So relationships with faculty had a really strong connection with student learning. Students talked a lot about casual moments like hikes and lunches where they felt like they were learning from a great resource. Students often described faculty as enthusiastic and passionate across all of our focus groups. One student explained that after being in the course, she felt like a student again, after having been in large lecture halls at U of M, feeling like a student again. Another student shared the experience of being at the station and their perception of how faculty feel being at the station. He said, they're the faculty, they're excited to be up here. They're as excited to be up here as any of us. It's a really cool experience to be able to learn in this type of setting. And I think for them, it's a really cool experience to be able to teach in this kind of setting. And one of the main things that students talked about as well was the class size, and that being in the small group and just being able to ask faculty members questions and faculty taking the time to explain things to students and to work with them was really crucial for those relationships and for their learning at the station. Students also talked quite a bit about the sense of community at the station and the positive, close-knit relationships they had with each other. In many of the courses, students use the word family to describe their classroom dynamic. Students talked about their class forming strong connections. Students plan to stay in touch, to live together in the future. And many students enjoyed the dining room environment that we had at the station, where the faculty just reach out to you and talk to you. And that was a really surprising experience, especially for our first and second year students. Again, one of the projects was building a sustainable building. And so one of the students in the course talked about how her sense of community was connected with the actual task that students were doing in the course. Saying, as we grow as a team and as we get closer, the success of our project grows. And as the success of our project grows, it brings us together. And every time we have some kind of problem that we run into, we solve it as a group. We are like, yes, high fives all around, and that makes our group tighter. So describing how connected this concept was of community to also what students are working on and doing in the course. We asked students again about their reasons for taking the course. So many students talked about the fact that it was a shorter time period with this Transforming Learning program was really important for them. Students talked about not having to give up other work opportunities in the summer, other courses, and also cost. So one student shared, I think that what made me come here is I've never been able to come to the biostation so far. The fact that it was within the tuition costs of the normal semester, I wouldn't have been able to come to do this course or have any of these experiences. And that's something I wanted to do since I came here to U of M. So we saw that in many of the focus groups with our students, talked about cost and the length of time at the station. We did see, we also, we're looking for feedback from students on ways that their experience can be improved. So students talked quite a bit about wanting more time at the station, which kind of goes hand in hand with a less intense workload. Students really were working hard at the station and putting in a lot of time in all of these projects. One student shared, the last couple of weeks, I've always wanted to go. I didn't get to do hiking or anything. I even wanted to go look at the straw bale house, but I haven't had time to do that. So students were very busy, and the workload was very demanding in many of these courses. And one of the other suggestions for improvement we found from across courses was that students wanted more structure in the course or clear expectations. And part of that may be sort of the less structured nature of some of the field work and things changing or fluctuating based on weather or other factors. But students just talked in general about wanting a bit more expectations about what to expect from the course and also a bit more structure in the course. So again, we had, three major goals as part of creating this program. We wanted to be able to increase the diversity of students at the station. We wanted to engage more students at the station, and we wanted to increase student scientific literacy and understanding at the station. And from what we found, the Transforming Learning program was successful, certainly in increasing the diversity in terms of race and ethnicity major academic year. As you saw, many students were able to come to the station. More students were able to come to the station with the Transforming Learning program, and we did see increases in many of our measures over the time period where students were at the station. One of the things we're also tracking is the broader impact of the experience. So we are keeping track of things that students have worked on, from the sustainable building I mentioned to some beautiful books, Flora Legion books, where students worked with an art professor to create some of these books. Grants, articles that have been published, and different collaborations with different park and lake associations around the area. We're also keeping track of where we're sharing some of this information, as well as where faculty teaching the courses are sharing some of this information and grants that faculty have been awarded as part of their experience with the Transforming Learning program. And we also see that, creating this program had a really broad impact on our station in terms of collaboration and the different units that the station works with on campus. So you see a list here of the different colleges and departments that the station has now been able to work with because of this program and developing different courses for students to come at the station that they may not typically come. So some of the things that we're still working on is we are continuing to survey our students on campus, as I mentioned, to get some of that pre-survey data and really understand if what we're seeing at the station is unique to the station, or we might see this across many kinds of science courses. We're going to continue our longitudinal surveys to look at some of these measures over time. We're going to continue to have discussions with our faculty and our TAs at the station and kind of get a really good picture of what is it like learning at a field station from a student's perspective, what is it like for faculty teaching at a field station, and for TAs, what is that experience like? And we've also been talking about developing some learning goals for humanities, social sciences courses specifically, so that we can create assessments that are different, if necessary, for those kinds of courses. And as I mentioned, everything that we've been doing with our assessment, we really want to use it to improve the student experience. So, using that information as much as possible with our faculty members and all of the staff to make changes. And I think we are ready for questions.
That was excellent. Stephanie and Alicia, thank you so much. I know it's hard. We can't see everybody, but I'm sure we're going to do a virtual clap. Thank you. It was really interesting. So I encourage everyone to start typing in your questions in the Q&A, and I will read them out, and we'll let Alicia and Stephanie answer them. So we already have one in, so we'll get started with, this is from AJ, who gave the webinar maybe 2 times ago now, I think. And she says, it is interesting that faculty experiences are less commonly identified by students as an important learning factor initially, but then more widely recognized by students after participating in the field courses. Based on your findings, is there anything you might recommend faculty to do or communicate earlier on to help students appreciate this and be able to leverage it sooner for recruitment and/or motivation? That's a good question.
Great question. And I actually worked in recruitment for the station for 7 years before I switched into this position. And I think we all who do this know that it's really hard to tell students ahead of time what the experience will mean for them. So we can say, you're going to have amazing letters of recommendation. You're going to get to really know what it's like to be a profession, or to have this as a profession. And they kind of don't get it or don't care. I don't know if you, so I'm trying to answer the question, and I'm stymied and have been stymied for like the entire time I did the recruiting piece.
Yeah, I think it's really tough also, because I think that they may, you know, as we see, they don't have those ideas going in. So I think a lot of students hear from other students about the station. So I think other students tend to be our best advocate of what the experience would be like and the benefits that students would gain. And I know we use a lot of students for recruitment.
One thing I can share that we've switched to doing is putting up with each course a little, when we advertise, we've switched all to web-based advertising. We don't have like a view book or anything anymore, but we try to include a quote or two from students who've taken the class before, and that's a good chance to say something like, you know, Professor so-and-so really made this material accessible, or, you know, changed my life. I mean, literally, you know, some people say it changed my life. So we started including those little snippets of quotes on the page that has information about each course.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is from Alan Berkowitz, and he says, one of the distinctive features of field station programs is a focus on place. Did some, most, or all of the courses you studied have a focus on place at or near the field station? And if so, what role do you think this played in student engagement and outcomes?
Yeah, well, you know, to varying degrees, all of the courses, because they're field-based, have a very strong sense of place. Every course gets its own minivan, not flotilla, caravan, right? So that they're going to the sites that are relevant to what they're studying. I think, I don't know how much you hear this in the focus groups, but a lot of students do say, you know, especially out-of-state students, I didn't realize that the state of Michigan was this, because Southeast Michigan is really different. It's flat and very sort of agricultural and urban, and then you get up here where it's pretty rural and forested.
Yeah, I think especially international students, a couple of international students I can think of in focus groups commented about that experience of just being in a different location in Michigan and seeing, you know, a part of the country that they hadn't seen before.
Comment in focus groups anything like, you know, we have we don't light the campus at night, so you can always see the stars. I feel like anecdotally, I hear a lot of students talk about how different that is. We heat with wood stoves and these little metal cabins.
Yes.
All of that place, I think students really identify with, but do they tend to process it as important?
Yeah, I think that comes up some in terms of their engagement. I think just being in a different setting, you know, they talk about being in a different setting, a setting away from traditional campus. And I think especially things like the dining hall, where students and faculty interact quite a bit, and like they don't see those lines as much with, like, I can't talk to a faculty member because they're a faculty member. You know, they sit down together, they share a meal together at all of the meals. And I think that's something that students talked about quite a bit, and that kind of thing may have played a big role in their sense of community. Okay, thank you.
It looks like, I think it's a question that was put into chat. I think we should address it. It says from Sarah Olson, and she says, I'll be really interested to see, will you be using the longitudinal information to assess if the increased sense of community and belonging among biostation students inside and outside the Transforming Learning Program affects students' long-range ultimate success at the university? Wow. She talks about the recent work that suggests the critical importance of community, and if the belonging generated at the biostation, you know, field station persists on campus.
That would be such a great thing that I would love to look at. We've been following up with the students every year, and we will continue to look at things like their retention in STEM majors, their retention at the university. So yes, I think we do plan to look at whether, you know, their experience at the station impacts impacts retention at a university and their success. However, we may define that at the university. And I think that would be really interesting to look at the degree of belonging at the station and how that might impact their retention down the road. Good question.
And you will have that, right? Like, you would track it for individual students,
Yes.
so to see those.
Yes. Yeah, we could split a high-low belonging groups. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Great question.
So I have a question, but I think because I'm a panelist, I couldn't figure out how to like officially type it in the Q&A, but, and it even follows a little bit on AJ's comment about the importance of faculty, but I just was curious how you got faculty on board. So it sounds like you got a wider diversity of students coming, but likely a wider diversity of faculty coming to teach at the station as well. And I just wanted to hear more about that and how you did that.
Yeah, that actually was, you know, we joke, we got notification that we received the grant, and then our director went on sabbatical. So we were sort of left in a lurch as staff to figure out how to move this forward. And I think we all assumed that, in fact, we developed a course proposal form, and we posted it online and announced sort of a request for proposals. And, you know, we're under the illusion that if you build it, they will come. So we got 0 proposals, and then had to go to phase B, which was really reaching out, going through the course guide and looking at who taught courses, you know, because outside of the biology, environment, and ecology and evolutionary departments, no one really knows about the station. So it was a 2-part, here's what the station is, and we have this opportunity for you to spend some time there. And it was a lot of one-on-one conversations, you know, maybe a quarter of which were fruitful, moving to stage 2 of getting someone to submit a proposal. And interestingly, and I think, you know, everyone, if you reflect on your own experience, this will make sense. It was easiest to get, we have a lot of lecturers at the university, so faculty who don't have the tenure responsibilities, but they're paid to teach. And those were the people who had the flexibility in their schedule to develop new courses for the spring and summer, because they weren't trying to do research, you know, to get tenure, or if they were senior faculty, it was hard to persuade someone to change their research program so that they could come up even for 2 or 3 weeks out of a field season. I don't know if that helps, Kari, but it was a lot of person hours just talking to people and pitching this idea.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because when I saw that, I figured it probably was some work to do that. So it didn't surprise me, and I wanted people to hear kind of the plan. Well, one other question related to that, I guess, is do you do any kind of specific mentor training with those faculty, or any kind of training that they have specific to working at the field station or anything? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Nothing formal, but a lot of informal. So we try to get anyone who seems remotely interested, we will take up to the station for a weekend, show them around, introduce them to the staff up there so they know sort of who all the support people are. We've got a great staff who are, I should explain, Stephanie and I and a lot of the administrative team work out of the Ann Arbor campus, September through April. And then we also have year-round staff up at the station, a chemist, a biologist, and then a lot of facilities and administrative folks, about 15 people. So introducing folks to them, you know, lets them see, okay, if I need to figure out where I could teach a class where we're going to be sampling, you know, these different wetland ecosystems, they can point me to the right place. Or even driving around, like the water law and policy person, you know, it's like, okay, let's go visit the Mackinac Bridge. Let's go see where the Enbridge pipeline comes up out of Lake Michigan. You know, we did a lot of site visits.
And many of the faculty in the Transforming Learning program came back the second year.
Yeah.
Almost all.
Yeah, so I think all but one maybe.
Yeah.
That's super neat. Well, we're not getting any more questions. I'll give people just another quick few seconds, 30 seconds. Are there any other questions that we have for Stephanie and Alicia? I'm sure they wouldn't mind following up. If y'all think of questions later, or you could get a hold of me. And I'm gonna share my screen from kind of like one last final note. end on here. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. Oh, you get to see the whole thing again. Oh, no, you don't. So this is just our kind of final reminder about how you can get involved in UFERN. There's a listserv if you want to hear more announcements. And I thought I had it on here. I guess I don't. Our next speaker is March 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. Allison Stokes, whose work focuses on designing inclusive field trips and field work and thinking about the pedagogy for that. So I look forward to seeing you, hopefully many of you, back at that. And Stephanie and Alicia, if you just wait a little bit, we can follow up after. I forgot to suggest that. So thank you everyone for attending the webinar, and you know how to reach us if you have questions.